So this is a project that I've been working with a small studio. It started off with a bike ride during lockdown, biking to their office in West Norwood from my house and back, with the intention of taking a photograph of the backyard of their space. On the way, I actually took loads of other photographs along the route. And these are some of the photographs: a speed bump in a paved hatch near Camberwell High Street, and drawings that were made in Dulwich Park during the lockdown and quarantine. These were different walls and surfaces in and around the site, around West Norwood. And
sorry.
yeah,
I'm gonna interrupt for a minute. I don't think we're seeing the slides. Is anyone else seeing the slides change?
No, just the first one.
So we're stuck on the first.
There we go. Here we go. Right. Okay. So let me do a different type of share where I share the desktop. Okay. Ooh. Shall I just restart?
Go for it.
Okay. So you heard about this. These are some of the images that were taken along the way. I had the intention to take one image, but we ended up taking lots of other images. These are drawings that are made in Dulwich Park along the path. During quarantine, a lot of drawings were made by children in paths. And this is a speed bump near Camberwell High Street. These are different surfaces actually in and around the small studio site. So you see like the repairing of walls, painting over graffiti marks. This kind of layering and texturing was kind of interested in thinking about just something that we picked up during the photography. These are different, peculiar, interesting moments that also happened in Bletchley Gardens, a bench in Dulwich Park, Lovers Walk. Some kind of interest in these kind of particular kind of curious things that happened along the way of this bike ride. This is the plan. We see the back of a small studio site where this is kind of studio, community kitchen and dining area. And the proposal for my project was is about having a kind of multifunctional space that's able to be used for existing kind of community. So this is a kind of community yard where there's a fire pit in the centre and there's a projector hanging in the air. So we're able to have these film screenings as well as making the space out of things that we make in the fire pit kiln at the centre of the space. Yeah, so you see we have this projection booth and screen that's projected on the back wall of the facade of a small studio. We have these fence panels, which is borrowing some of the images that are picked up along this bike route. So it's like the idea is that this is almost like a collection of the images or like a kind of representation of the bike journey that I initially took to a small studio. So a lot of these things are kind of coming out through the detailing. So understanding the context of the architect arriving at the site and what their kind of experiences were in order to get there, and that kind of playing out in the facades. Yeah, you can see these reference points here, and you can see some of the reference points in the back surface, and these kind of movable elements that can hang on the wall as well. I'm interested in the relief, and there's a particular project called the Malagarbia Works by Will Alsop and Bruce McLean, where they kind of went on a holiday in Spain and kind of made immediate kind of arts and architectures just with in a kind of local context. So this idea of kind of producing a work out of a journey is something of particular interest. These are some of my works I've been doing recently. So like there's they've been making these pewter necklaces that came from this painted over graffiti. So the idea of I suppose there's a piece of graffiti, then there's someone's come and painted over the top of it, and it's made this new form, and then this new form is then represented in this necklace. And there's my article from AD, guest edited by Ed Wall, Meal Deal Ecologies, which explains a bit more about my art practice. If you'd like to know more about that, I studied at Slade School of Fine Art, and I started making a lot of artworks while I was there, but I was also interested. I actually became more interested. I was making artworks and sculptures, but I was also doing the parties and events. And I realized that the parties and the events were a lot more interesting than the artworks that I was making. It was maybe came a bit more out of my landscape practice understanding. So doing things like gathering cables and wires for events, and making a wall in a moment, and changing the lighting and taking pictures of parties. I really start to see if like the tools of my kind of landscape and art practice more than kind of making an object that would sit in a gallery. So I'm starting to sort of bring closer connections between landscape and art in my practice. Here's just talking about the floor surface as a kind of relief. This is something else also made during quarantine in our back garden, where we kind of poured concrete and existing sort of found objects to make new floor surfaces. The image in the top left is James Fox from FFLO, who I work with closely, and he's worked on the project with a small studio. This is his lime wall that he rendered and kind of scored into. So the surface at a small studio is kind of like an existing concrete slab. So this kind of scoring into the surface is something I'm quite interested in doing. But also the kind of momentary experience of kind of making these things is also really interesting for me. This is the unit that we teach in Masters Glaze Unit Fire Squad Magic at University of Greenwich, and we have made pit-fired kilns. So we talk about all these momentary immediate experiences in the making of landscapes in this, and this is a kind of, we went in December and camped in and made a pit fire and fired these group analytical clay tiles. This is the bench, and this is the inspiration for the bench that goes around the edge. These things that are made in the fire pit of the small studio could then be attached to form the seating work around the edge of the seating. So this is that idea of like tying fired clay to the edges of seating. Across the road from a small studio, there's St. Matthew, and he's overlooking the studio rather romantically. And the idea for this sort of ominous hanging projector is something that's kind of interesting to me, in the same way that St. Matthew sort of ominously stares over a small studio. These are the final renders, but the renders are nothing without the idea of action and activity and program. So these kind of became the final renders, where we're starting to see some of these precedents and experiences and people sort of occupy the space in different ways. And I think that is it. And I would like to say that this kind of way of working and thinking about traveling to a site and occupying a site and program and noticing what's already around West Norwood is really important for West Norwood High Street, I think.